Shalom again from Mount Carmel. Now, I have to start by making a little confession. I'm not actually standing at the beach, and I don't have a wonderful seaside scene behind me. The truth is, I'm actually standing in Hannah's bedroom with the same blank wall that you saw behind me in the last video. But, well, I chose this backdrop for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I thought it was probably a little bit more interesting. And secondly, it's got some relevance to the word that I think God has given me to share today. I was reading the news just recently, and I was intrigued by an article I saw about a British startup that has successfully developed and invented a real-life invisibility shield. And this thing really looks quite amazing. I've seen pictures of it, and the shield, when you hold it up, you literally cannot see whatever it is that is standing just behind the shield. When you look through the shield, you see whatever is in the background, but you don't see the thing that's standing just behind the shield. And I was amazed at the science of this thing. And when I read about it, I saw that these young scientists who have developed it, they've actually worked out a way of bending the light. So the objects that are just in front of this invisibility shield, somehow the light rays from those objects get bent off and distorted to the sides, so you don't see the light rays that are coming off the objects just behind the shield. And the rays of light from the objects in the background, those ones come through strong and direct, so you see the background and you don't see the thing that's right behind the shield. So I was amazed by this incredible science and physics. And then I thought a little bit, and I thought, maybe it's not that new actually. Maybe human beings have been hiding things behind invisibility shields, have been doing everything they can to bend the light so no one will ever see the thing that is hiding right behind the screen in front of their eyes. Maybe humans have been doing this process for many, many years, maybe since the very beginning of time itself. And it got me thinking a little bit about some of my own invisibility shields that I've erected and built up very successfully over the course of my own life. And one of the shields that came to my attention particularly was the one that I put up in the years before Yaakov and Hannah joined our family. In those years, there was a very deep and big sorrow that was sitting there right in the forefront of my life, that was never really far from my thoughts or from my heart. There was this aching pain and longing for children. And it was an issue that Colin and I were struggling with, that we were weeping over, that we were praying over. But what I did in those years, I didn't want people to see this sorrow that was probably the biggest sorrow in my life. And I didn't want anyone to be asking me questions about this thing that was so raw. I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to expose something that I didn't have answers or explanations for, that I didn't always want to be talking about. And so I think I became an expert at putting up this invisibility shield in front of it. So when people looked at my life, they saw the beautiful backdrop, they saw the scenery, they saw all of the other things, but behind the scenes I was desperately spending all my energy bending the light so that nobody would see this deep, real, enormous sorrow. And there were very few people who I shared this sorrow with. And in fact, I think most of the time, even when I did share the sorrow, I still practiced some sort of light distortion. I maybe shared in some of the terms that this was something we were struggling with, this was something that we wanted. But I always added in this little bending of the light within the same conversation, where I pointed the conversation back to the beautiful background, back to all the other wonderful things that God was doing in us and our lives. And they were true. I'm not saying those things were not true, they weren't wonderful, but I just know that what I was doing in those moments was just bending the light to make our struggle to have children sound like it was maybe a challenge, but a manageable challenge that was okay. It didn't distort everything else in our lives, that it didn't keep me up drenching the pillow with tears at night, that didn't tear my heart in two, that it wasn't a sorrow that was really as big or really as in the forefront as it actually was. And I think probably inside my heart, I didn't really think that my invisibility shield was all that good. I think I thought that people could see right through it. I thought that it was more like the Emperor's new clothes than a real invisibility shield. That there was I saying, there's this material, there's this screen, and there's a real screen, and I thought people were just politely pretending they didn't see the sorrow, where really I was sure that everyone could see right the way through, like the Emperor's new clothes, that everyone could really see how painful this thing is, how vulnerable I was. I believed that people were just being polite, or people were just not wanting to hurt me when they seemed not to know how painful this thing was that I was trying to hide. And it surprised me in the years after Yaakov and Hannah came to our family, and all of the joy that they have brought with them. It surprised me how several people have said to me, but I never knew that you even particularly wanted children. I never knew this was a big deal. I never knew that was a longing of your heart. And I look back and I think, how could you not know? There was this sorrow, there was this issue, this thing that was sitting there at the forefront of my life. How could you have not have seen it? And I realise it's not that they were blind, it's not that these people didn't love me, that they weren't sensitive. It's that we actually get very, very good. Our invisibility shields are stronger and more powerful than we even realise. And we can become absolute experts at hiding the true depth of the things that scare us and cause us pain, and things that are messy in our lives. Our invisibility shields are extremely powerful. We are experts at bending the light. And one of my favourite verses of scripture is Psalm 36 verse 9, that says, "With you is the fountain of life. In your light we see light." And in recent times I've taken down and I've discovered several invisibility shields that were so invisible that even I didn't really see what was behind them, because I'd even somehow managed to hide from myself things that were painful that were lurking behind these shields. And I've realised how important this process is, that we have to let the Lord's light shine right the way through our lives and bring all of these light rays into their correct focus, to straighten out all the bent light, so exactly who we are and what is going on in our lives, it comes into a correct focus. I'm not saying that we should all go around and tell everybody now all the things that are struggles in our lives, all the messiest, most painful things. I'm not saying that. Most of the times when we put up these invisibility shields, we've done it for a good reason. We've done it because these are private, sensitive, painful things, and they're meant to remain private. But I do now see how important it is that we ourselves allow the Lord to lead us into those places and turn the light on, so we ourselves don't have these shields up in our own lives. So we are truthful and honest, and we understand the true landscape of our lives. And that's when God brings healing. That's when he shares his light, and he turns all of our sorrows into beauty and into rejoicing and into the strength, the things that make us strong in our lives. And I also think that if at all possible, maybe it's not always possible, but if at all possible, it's good to pray that God would show us those one or two trusted special people who we can allow ourselves to be real with, who we can allow ourselves to practice not bending the light and taking down the shields, people we trust who will keep our confidences, and who we can really share who we really, really are with. And I believe that this is the way into the true healing and the depth of faith, the depth of connection with God and with ourselves that God really wants for us in these days right now. Bless you now in the name of Yeshua. Amen.